I decided to write this speech about stories as the result of a serious case of writer's block. A bit ironic, but it was the only idea I had left. 1,000 words were due the next day, and if I didn't have them in by second hour, I was dead. Well, perhaps not dead, but I'd be in detention despite any kind of begging or excuses or pledges of lifelong service, which would be incredibly humiliating. And besides, wounded pride can sometimes feel equivalent to death, especially in middle school. Anyway, I'd gone through at least 7 different introductions and 3 ideas, and I was having no luck. Every time I put my fingers down to the keys, it didn't feel right. The language was stilted. I didn't have enough to say to get even over 50 words out of it. I was beginning to freak out. Did I mention the looming possibility of detention? And I was racking my brains for ideas. Anything at all. I knew the reason I couldn't get anything out of it. The reason was that I didn't care about what I was saying. It just didn't matter to me. So in this case, the question was, what does matter to me? What do I care about? Well, I was pretty sure I couldn't do a talk on Gilmore Girls Marathon, so I chose the next best thing. In fourth grade, I had no friends. I had recently transferred schools, and I was the new girl. And unfortunately, being quite an unassertive at the time, I didn't make much progress. I guess it wasn't that the other girls were mean, it was just that they had already formed their groups, and I was the outsider trying to butt in. It was then, I think, that I developed my love for reading in earnest. With nobody to talk to, I found that reading provided me with a place to go when I was feeling lonely, which happened a lot. You don't have to face the real world when you're surrounded by armies battling to save Middle Earth. When you read, you can immerse yourself in different places, see the world through somebody else's eyes. You can connect with the characters, you can feel what they feel, and sometimes you might even just say, hey, me too. It's been 4 years since my lonely fourth grade year, and I'm 13 now. It's my biggest dream to become a published author. Writing fills me with the kind of joy that a lot of things don't. I love to put my fingers to the keyboard and type my ideas into the computer. I love to create characters and their stories. I think it has a lot to do with that Me Too feeling. Stories can connect people like nothing else. When you read a novel, you are seeing into at least one character's unguarded, uncensored heart and soul. You know what they are thinking and feeling. You know their hopes, their dreams, and their greatest fears. And you begin to feel for them in most cases. Maybe you sympathize with them because you've been in a situation like that before. Maybe it's because you can remember a time when you felt exactly the same they do. Regardless of the cause, you connect with them. You form some sort of attachment to them. You become invested in them, which is why it tends to sting so much if the author brutally murders them. They matter to you. And when you become connected to the story, you become connected to the people reading it. They all feel whatever it is that you felt in reading that story. Say you're at a party and you know nobody at all except for the one friend that told you that you should go. If you're like me and you're shy around strangers, you'll probably sit in one corner of the room holding your one friend hostage until and unless something happens that convinces you that you might actually have something in common with the people surrounding you. Something like a book, for example. Somebody walks into this party wearing a Harry Potter t-shirt. You size them up and they seem friendly enough, so you walk over and awkwardly make a comment on their shirt. They respond without sounding annoyed, so you take that as an invitation to continue. Before you know it, you're discussing whether or not Cedric Diggory was worthless, and you've actually left your corner for good. This situation might be a little extreme, but the concepts are real. Modern day fan bases are perfect examples of how stories bring people together. All they are a group of people that geek out about the same thing. They loved the stories and the characters that inhabit it, and that's what brought them together. This is what I love about writing. Not just the way it can take people to different places and show them worlds they'd never have discovered on their own, but how it can take two people who probably would have never ever spoken to each other and given them something to chat over coffee about. It shows you that, hey, maybe you aren't as alone as you thought. Maybe the island that you've convinced yourself that you're on isn't all that far from the shore. It shows you that the things that you thought only you felt, or the things that you didn't know how to express, other people feel them, not just fictional characters. Because to love the characters, you've got to see something in them that you understand. Something has got to click. And if that something clicks in you, it will probably click in somebody else. Stories have been around for generations, and they probably always will be. Whether those stories be sci fi thrillers or fantastic adventures, or the boring stories that come out of history textbooks. These stories will always entertain us, unless they're the textbook kind, teach us, especially if they're the textbook kind, and connect us. And that connection is truly one of a kind. Because if you look a little closer, it might just teach you something about yourself that you never knew before.